Hello, everyone, and welcome to My Menopause Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Mache Seibel, and I'm also the editor of My Menopause Magazine, which is available in the Apple newsstand. Today we have a discussion that has to do with grief. We have the distinct pleasure of having with us someone who is really an authority about this subject, Dr. Gail Gross. How do you define grief? I mean, what is grief? What's it all about?
Margaret, she always said, when a person is born, we rejoice, and when they are married, we jubilate, but when they die, we try to pretend that nothing has happened. We know that grief is essential to everything we do, not just the loss of a loved one, like family member, but even the loss of a house, the loss of a job, the loss of a friendship, the changes that we go through, the loss of our youth, our markers like 21st birthday, congratulations to your son.
Thank you.
All of these changes, all these transitions hold within them the texture of grief.
So you're talking about really an experience in life that represents a loss which we acknowledge sometimes openly, sometimes we try to gloss it over and say acknowledgement that we should.
Well, yes, and you know, when we're depressed or we're sad for other reasons, we see that, it can even be clinical illness, we see that as one thing. But grief is different because it's natural. It's a natural impulse that we experience, even day to day. You know, in our lives, if we are sad about something, our psyche takes us to a place which feels, in a sense, this transition of loss. If we have an argument with a mate or a child or a friend, we're sad about that. But it's in the context of grieving rather than in the context of illness. So it's a natural thing that we experience even all day long as a transition between feeling good and feeling lost. And then, of course, we have those large losses, which are lifelong issues that we learn how to cope with and strategies that help us live with.
How would somebody recognize that they're actually grieving?
It's a sadness, not a depression. And that's the distinction between illness and something that has a reason to be. So when you're feeling sad, friend, then we have another issue. And then that feeling may have to do with mental health. But grief is not about that. Grief is a normal and natural experience. You could say, basically, we go through feelings of annihilation and happiness all day long because at the end of the day, we know that we are all terminal and we're all terminal together. So in the context of just living, there is this deep feeling that we have that we are at some point going to die.
We can even grieve a future loss.
That's right.
What are some of the things that you encourage people to do so that as they pass through the valley of darkness, what is one to do?
The main number one thing we have to do is take care of our needs, our first primary needs. That means to eat, to sleep, to bathe, and just take care of ourselves as if we were our own child. Take care of the first primary essentials, eating, sleeping. That's what we have to do to get ourselves into some kind of routine. And then the second most important thing is we have to allow ourselves to grieve. And that means to be gentle with ourselves and to not impose any shoulds on ourselves. If we don't want to go out, don't go out. If you want to go out, go out. But allow the grief to wash over you. Only by facing your grief, that's where the title, The Only Way Out, is through. And this is any transition, actually. By looking at it and facing it, that's the only way we can acknowledge and recognize what's happening to us and, in the end, deal with it.
It has been a real pleasure to talk with you, and I want to say that her book, again, is The Only Way Out is Through. And I also want to tell you that Dr. Gross has made as a special gift to you an opportunity to get some of her meditations, which are on her website. And if you are to go to Dr. Gail Gross, that's DrGailGross.com/store. There are some meditations which she has made available for free. I want to remind you that you're listening to My Menopause Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Mache Seibel,